Gold text on a black screen reads Disability Visibility, presented by the Paul K. Longmore Institute on Disability and the Disability Visibility Project. White text on a black screen reads Disability Visibility Project, creating, sharing, and amplifying disability media and culture at Dis Visibility. The Paul K. Longmore Institute on Disability logo.
Welcome everybody to Disability Visibility, first-person stories from the 21st century. Big thanks and shout out to the Paul K. Longmore Institute on Disability with Disability Visibility Project for the launch of Alice Wong's collection of contemporary essays by disabled people. You can follow along or shout us out, tweet, whatever you do at Longmore INST and at the @ Disvisibility. You can visit the Longmore Institute online at Longmore Institute, all one word, .sfsu.edu and Disability Visibility Project, all one word, .com. Zoom and access tips. For captioning, toggle on the CC, closed caption button, on the bottom of the window. However, Zoom captioning is a bit flawed. For easier viewing of captioning, we have emailed the link. It is a very long HTTPS string that I won't be reading, but everybody should have that in their email. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the Q&A box or email Beitiks, BEITIKS, at sfsu.edu. We'll have time for a couple of questions at the end. Also, finally know that this event is being filmed. Hope you're okay with that. The next slide lists where to find all of us. You can live tweet, and we hope that you will, #disability visibility. And there's a list of everybody's handles that you can, and ways to reach us that has also been emailed to you. All right, so I want to just first shout out and give thanks to our interpreters, Ebony and Annie, and to our captioner, Lisa. My name is Yomi Wrong, and I will begin by describing myself for those who need that audio description or if you're joining via telephone. And I want to apologize in advance. I'm going to continue to look to my left. It's just an access requirement that I have. I'm having a little bit of issue with my vision today. And so I've had to expand my notes into very big font to refer to them. So I want to be looking directly at you, but sometimes I'm going to be looking to my left. So again, my name is Yomi. I am an African-American woman and a little person. I have shoulder length curly hair, which I have twisted and pinned back in the front. I'm wearing glasses, earrings, and a light colored cotton dress with little purple flowers. I'm sitting in a power wheelchair in my kitchen, zooming from my kitchen counter. Behind me is my living room and a couch with many colorful pillows, varying shapes and sizes, probably too many pillows. I love pillows. Above the couch is a window, and to the left of the window is a metal wall hanging of an oak tree that has many entwined branches, and that is the symbol of Oakland, California, where I live. Also in view is my front door, painted red for luck, and you may catch a glimpse of a petite cat or a giant white puppy as we go along. So now that I've set the scene, I want to wish everyone a very happy 30th ADA anniversary. Woo! Clap, 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 applause. There are a ton of fun ADA events happening this week and this weekend. So we all want to thank you, and we appreciate you so much for choosing to spend part of your Saturday with us. Alice and I have been in community for a number of years here in the Bay Area. That's my girl. And look at her, she's all cute, wearing a sparkly disco shirt and those red lips. I love it. We've been friends, collaborators, and comrades doing disability justice movement work. When she asked me to moderate this discussion, it was so it feels like a lifetime ago, Alice, that you asked me to do this. It was pre-COVID, pre-social justice uprising, racial justice uprising. And of course, I was happy to say yes, but none of us knew what the world would look like this summer. So I just want to take a minute, a breath, and acknowledge that this time right now is a lot. It's heavy, it's uncertain, it's frightening for many of us. It may feel exciting because we know that the world is being remade. We don't know what it's going to look like later, but you know, something's happening, something's blooming. But for me, getting to just hang out and discuss something other than our fears and survival for a little while, it feels like a refreshing splash of cool water. I hope that you feel that way after this next hour and a half or so together. I'm so grateful to you, Alice, for asking me to hold this space. And I'll just say that reading the selections from the writers with us today, it made me feel so proud to know that they exist in the disability community. Some of these writers I know and I've been in community with, others I'm just getting to know through their works. Their voices are vibrant, their writing and perspectives are fresh and provocative, and it's like nothing I've ever seen before in a collection. So before we get into all of it, I'll ask each of them to introduce themselves now, and then Alice and I will chat, and then we will all be in discussion. So that's how today's gonna go. And then at the end, again, we'll have time for a couple of questions, so please use the Q&A feature. So Ariel, Haben, Lateef, Patti, and S.E., can you each in turn introduce yourselves by giving an audio description and sharing just a little bit about your story and what your story in this anthology means to you? So we'll start with Ariel.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Hi. So thank you, Yomi, and thank you, Alice, and to everyone else involved in putting this on. It means a lot to me to get to be involved and have my story included. I'll start with my description. So I am a white woman with long, wavy brown hair. I have Cruzon syndrome, which is a craniofacial condition where the bones in the head fuse prematurely. And I mention that because that is why my face is asymmetrical. So my eyes are a little bit far apart and the outer edges slant downward. And I am wearing a black romper with pink and white flowers on it. And behind me is a white wall. So just to kind of add to what I write about, I focus on my upbringing with Cruzon syndrome and living with a facial difference. I talk a lot about face equality, which is just basically the idea that everybody should be treated the same regardless of what we look like and the appearance of our face. So exactly what it sounds like. I'm a writer, and that's really what I'm passionate about. So thank you, everyone, and I look forward to this event.
Thank you, Ariel. Haben.
Ariel?
I don't see you yet, but I hear it. There you are. Hi.
Hi everyone, this is Haben speaking. I'm from the California Bay Area. My parents are from Eritrea and Ethiopia and Africa. So I'm Black and grew up in Oakland. Went away for college and law school, then came back to the Bay Area. I'm an attorney, disability advocate, and an author, which is another reason I'm such a big fan of this book. Image description. So, you know, I'm a Black woman. I have black curly hair pulled up to the side, and I'm wearing a black and white dress. Sitting in my living room, behind me is a black sofa. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Haben. Lateef. Hey.
Hi, I am Lateef McLeod, and I am a Black man with cerebral palsy. I have my hair in a low-cut fade. I have a mustache. I am wearing a button-up shirt, and I am in a Permobile power wheelchair. My chapter in the book is entitled Gaining Power Through Communication Access, and it's an interview between Alice and I that discuss how augmentative alternative communication, or AAC technology, assists people with complex communication, or CCN, to have a chance to express themselves and engage with the members of their community. We also discuss how this advancement in this technology widens the possibilities for people who have CCN to have access to more affordable AAC through apps on mobile devices like phones or tablets. It was an honor to be included in this book, and I hope people enjoy reading the chapter.
Thank you, Lateef. I enjoyed reading it. It was just dope. Thank you. All right, Patti.
Hi, everyone. First, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's put so much effort into putting this event together, and congratulations to Alice. And thank you, Yomi and Emily, so much. Again, my name is Patti Byrne, and I am a femme presenting brown-skinned person. I have my hair in two buns on my head, one red and one yellow, and fierce eyebrows drawn on my face, and multi-red dress on floral. Lots of art in the background, including some by Micah Bazant and a Buddha head and plants in my living room. A bit about me: I am the executive and artistic director of Sins Invalid, a disability justice-based performance project centering disabled people of color and trans, non-binary, and queer disabled people. I'm Haitian and Japanese, first generation born in what I feel needs to be named this settler colonial project known as the USA. I'm living on unceded Chochenyo Ohlone land, known otherwise as the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area. And I was born in San Francisco. I wrote about, well, actually, I spoke about how we as disabled people, as multiply marginalized disabled people, queer, indigenous folks that are incarcerated, disabled folks of color, how we can survive climate chaos. This conversation turned into an interview, turned into a piece. It was originally an interview, and I want to acknowledge and thank Vanessa Raditz, who did the original interview with me, and she is with the Queer Eco Justice Project, and they're making a film, Fire and Flood, Queer Resilience in the Era of Climate Change.
All right. Thank you, Patti.
Thank you.
S.E. pulling up behind at the end, but not last.
My favorite. My name is s.e.smith. I am a chubby white person with short curly brown hair that is a little frizzy today. I'm wearing a black button-down shirt, and I'm sitting in my office, which means you are mostly seeing books. You may also see one or more cats at some point this afternoon. We shall see if the fates favor us. So my essay in this anthology is about Crip Space, which is space that it is built by and for disabled people. With my essay, I really wanted to highlight that we live in a community and that shared and overlapping identities bring us solidarity and joy and strength. Crip Space can sometimes make non-disabled people feel uncomfortable, which is something I really wanted to drive at in this essay, the idea that there are spaces that are not for you, and you need to learn to be okay with that. And it also really defies the belief that we only find community in medicalized settings. We are more than people waiting in waiting rooms. We are more than people in an ICU. And unfortunately, some of us really only get a chance to discover crip space much later in life. So I have been thinking a lot about how to change that and connect people with their people.
Excellent, thank you. I really enjoyed that piece. Thank you. All right, Miss Alice, come on back, girl.
Oh, hey everybody. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. I'm just so thrilled, and to give a special shout out to Yomi and Emily Smith Basics, who is behind the scenes organizing everything and making sure this webinar goes smoothly, along with her team. I'm an Asian American disabled woman. I am wearing a very sparkly sequin shirt made of silver sequins. I'm wearing bright red lipstick because I decided to glam up today because it's going to be a very special event. There are no hoodies. There are no pajama bottoms on tonight. And yeah, so this is my way of whooping it up. So I have a shirt. Oh, thank you. So I am sitting in my bedroom. It's very dark in the background because I don't have a fancy setup, but this is what I got. And there is a mask over my nose attached to a tube that is connected to my ventilator. So thank you all for being here.
All right, let's get into it, Alice. Girl, this book, fire. Thank you. On behalf of like everybody in the world and everybody who's going to read this and who will read it into the future because it's going to exist now forever, thank you. Your framing of the book discusses storytelling as a tool for resistance, community building, cultural identity and preservation. And I feel like this has really been like your ministry for as long as I've known you. You know, just amplifying disabled folks, encouraging storytelling, getting our stories out there, and really shaping culture and shaping our community. And, you know, and I think about literature, right? And what we're taught in schools, and there's like this concept of a literary canon. So one of my questions to you is, are you proposing this anthology is a or the disability canon?
Absolutely not. I think canons are made to be blown up and expanded and reimagined. I don't like the idea of a static canon of what is disability culture or disability rights or whatever we want to title this. This is just one book out of history of decades of work. On top of that, cultural work by deaf and disabled folks. So this is just an offering of, I think, you know, something that's very personal in terms of something curated by me. So this is a kind of a reflection of the issues and people that I'm personally a fan of, and that's of topics that I deeply care about, especially in terms of this snapshot in time, which is why, you know, what I think is somewhat unique about this book is that these are 21st century stories, meaning they were published within the last 19 years. So this is really just a sample of the lived experience of disability in this time period. So I think, you know, I clearly, if people end up reading the introduction, you know, I really want to make it clear that, you know, this is not an A to Z, you know, collection of disability, because that's pretty much impossible. This is not Disability 101, where it's here for non-disabled people who want to learn about disability. This is not a bunch of human interest stories. These are pretty kind of deep cuts, you know. We're gonna dive deep, and I think this is an invitation for people to learn and to grow and to want to learn more. I think that's kind of the goal in my mind. That this is just a great sample and to encourage people afterwards. So in the back of the book, there's reading lists and resources. So I do want people to read more work by the contributors and a hella ton of other people that I clearly could not include because otherwise this book would be, you know, a multi-set book. But this is a beginning, and that's how I see this book.
I'm glad that you mentioned deep cuts, right? Like I'm a child of the 70s, you're a child of the 80s. So it's gonna hit when I say this anthology to me is like a mixtape.
You know it, it's a mixtape.
And give to your friend, your crush, whatever, and maybe to bridge any generational gaps there, perhaps we can talk about this project in terms of a playlist.
Oh, it's a mixtape. I mean, it is.
Is it a playlist? Where are we talking about deep cuts or maybe hits?
So I guess for the kids today, it could be like a Spotify playlist, but really it's a mixtape. So, you know, this is something that I selected carefully in terms of the order and the types of folks and the types of stories. You know, I think one thing that editors do that's not, it doesn't show up very much, but like, you know, editors are very deliberate about the choices they make. And you can't really, maybe you can, but maybe you can't see it like through. It might not be super apparent, but it is. And I think that this is kind of, in a way, you know, a Valentine for the disability community by me. And it's, you know, it's a very personal Valentine. It's something I crafted with love and care. If I could add stickers and glitter, I would. But, you know, this is really something centered for us. And the idea is that I'm not trying to orient myself to what we think of as the general audience. You know, I really want to retain the language and terms that people use throughout their essays and not have to like explain it or have a bunch of footnotes. Like, I want to redirect people to where we are. You know, we're in a lot of different places too. We're not all on the same page either. So that's the whole thing, is really trying to recenter us and have that be a welcoming invitation for everyone.
That's so, thank you. That's amazing. And I know, you know, you're so generous in giving this platform to writers and thinkers. And I know it's very important to you that we give the bulk of this time together over to these Bay Area contributors. So that's what we're going to do now. But I do just want to let you know that, like, when you read the book and the way you have it structured and the way it builds, I can see your intention in it. It doesn't feel like things were just haphazardly slapped together in there. I can feel that. And because I know you, I know that you do everything with intention and love. And so again, thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And I'm really excited to just hear from all the contributors. And yeah, so thank you so much. So I will turn myself off.
Okay.
And away we go.
Go. All right. I'm going to ask the first questions of Ariel, and then Lateef, and then Haben. So Ariel, I'll wait till you come back on. Hey. What are you most proud of related to your piece?
A lot. So I wrote this essay about basically finding out that there's a mathematical equation that shows that I'm ugly, and then finding an article that compared my face to a Picasso painting, which is an interesting experience to have at 13. But I wrote this essay 4 years ago, and it originally ran in Narratively in 2016. And I wrote it and was just kind of like, "Oh, I don't know if it's any good, but here it is, you know."
No,
And
it's fire. Let me tell you, Ariel, I learned things. First of all, you taught me some stuff, and to me that's the best when you're reading a piece and you actually come away feeling like you've gained something. So I want to thank you for that. But no, it's amazing.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, the response to it was really amazing. Hearing from people within the facial difference or disfigurement, I know there's a lot of, it depends on what term people prefer, so I'll use that kind of interchangeably. But the response from that community and the disability community was like the most rewarding thing for me personally, because I'm an identical twin, and so I grew up having my twin sister, but it was kind of just the two of us. We were always the only ones in school or on sports teams or whatever who looked the way that we did, so it felt very isolating. And I know that I am lucky that I had somebody, but to find out that there's a whole community out there that I had no idea existed really was amazing. And I'm really proud that I've gotten to connect with those people, and that now there are 13, 14, 15, even younger kids who are growing up with Cruzon syndrome or with another craniofacial condition that can now Google Cruzon syndrome and see my Instagram account or my Twitter or an article I wrote or a picture of me that says I'm doing fine, because so many kids and parents are scared, and especially when you go through physically traumatic surgeries and operations, and you know, like growing up, I could Google it and I wouldn't find anything. I didn't know what a surgery was going into it. I didn't know what it meant. It was scary. And so to be able to be that resource for people is awesome. So that's kind of the big thing. I'm trying not to talk too much, sorry. And then professionally speaking, this essay did lead to a book that's going to come out next fall. So A Face for Picasso, which I still feel weird saying out loud because I feel like it's not actually real. And so if I say it, it's not going to come true. But no, the plan is for it to come out. So that's a really cool thing for me too. So yeah, that's kind of a summary of what I'm most proud of, and I'm just appreciative of everybody who takes the time to read it and does learn something from it. So thanks.
Thank you, Ariel. I look forward to reading your book. Can't wait.
Thanks.
Lateef. Hey, same question for you. What are you most proud of related to your piece in the book?
What I am most proud of regarding my piece is it gives voice to the importance of AAC and also the experiences of people who use AAC. I think even in the disability community, there is still a maybe limited understanding of what it's like to be a person who uses AAC or what AAC technology is available. Now that AAC technology is more available, we see more people who use AAC go to college, pursue careers, and lead productive, fulfilling lives. I know my chapter is brief, but I hope it gives readers the preliminary information to research about what people who use AAC are accomplishing in their community and also improvements in AAC technology. I hope the piece further normalizes the mode of AAC communication in our culture. People who use AAC not only need advancement in AAC technology, but also a cultural change that increases the acceptance of different forms of communication modes that include AAC among a series of other ways of talking to each other.
Thank you, Lateef. Haben?
Haben speaking.
Hi, Haben.
My essay is about my relationship with my guide dog. I have a German Shepherd guide dog from the Seeing Eye. And when people see us, we often get comments along the lines of, "Look at that dog taking care of the blind woman. The dog sure knows where he's going. How does he always know where to take her?" The emphasis is on the dog's intelligence and the dog's leadership and guiding skills. And I'm assumed to just be tagging along, going off to wherever the dog wants to take me. When these little comments come up, it's usually in situations where I don't have the ability to fully explain, to sit down with the person and explain the dynamics of the relationship. What I'm proud of in this essay is that I found a way to explain to people the relationship I have with my guide dog with humor and patience, and giving people the whole backstory of the relationship with the dog. If I were to summarize the essay in one word, the word is interdependence. The dog depends heavily on me. I need to know where I'm going. The dog never, ever knows where I'm going. He takes his cues from me. I tell him left, right. When we get lost, it's up to me to help find our way back. I've spent many years learning orientation and mobility skills. I had to be really good with the white cane before I could advance to working with the guide dog. All of that is erased when people make comments. "What a good boy taking care of the blind woman." So the essay is a way to explain to people this is interdependence. The blind person is leading in this relationship. The guide dog depends on the blind person's competence, knowledge, direction, and orientation skills. So all of that is explained with kindness and humor.
It is explained in such a wonderful way. I loved reading your essay, and I know I don't have a service dog, and I've never obviously used a guide dog, but I have plenty of friends who have, and it's just, again, like I was saying to Ariel, it's like I felt like I learned so much, a little bit more about the intimacy of that relationship and that interdependence when I read your essay. And so I just appreciated that. And the same with Lateef, like if I can just say to Lateef also, reading your piece, Lateef, it actually made me kind of thirst to have more communication with you, to be able to just have more conversation with you, and to be able to have more connection. So thank you for that. The second question is for Patti, followed by S.E. Thank you, Haben. So I'll give Patti a second to join us. Hi, Patti.
Hi.
So you were talking about our survival through climate crisis, and I'll let you describe more about your piece, but I'm just wondering if you could talk also about how or whether your thinking on the topic has shifted or expanded since the interview and then it became an essay.
Yeah, I mean, as you noted earlier, the world has shifted. It's a different context for climate chaos, right? There are, just nationally, there are rebellions against police violence against Black folks and Black communities, rebellion against the anti-Blackness that is endemic in white supremacy, calls for defunding the police. And that's just in our country. And we know that, that's become a global force really, which hopefully will also lead to conversations about reparations. There's a global pandemic that is, I believe, another face of climate chaos. And it really serves to underscore the way that we're marginalized as disabled people and as people of color. And then our entitled white supremacist president has, really bared his teeth, leaning on force and making it very explicit that, he's ideologically committed to white supremacy. And, everything from speaking at Mount Rushmore on July 4th to holding a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the site of a huge massacre of African American folks in 1921. And so, this is the context we're now, and within climate chaos. And so, for me, I've really seen the ways that we are experiencing trauma individually and collectively, and the way that we're really experiencing in what some might call complex trauma. Not just the trauma of the medical industrial complex that we're, avoiding and leaning on, that is also behaving in eugenic ways toward us when we do engage with it, with the pandemic, but also, again, like the daily dehumanizing, insidious trauma that we experience. And, all of these they're not just ideas, right? Like when we address climate chaos, like this isn't just an idea, this is what it looks like in real terms. This is what we're experiencing in real terms, and folks, in lots of places have already known this, have been flooded out, have been, surviving hurricanes and floods, etc. But with this pandemic, there's no area on the entire globe where we can, say, oh, it's not touched. And so with trauma, we can think of our responses to it as individuals looking like fight or flight or freeze, or, newly added has been fawn, which is like appease or please. And I've seen it in our organizations, I've seen it in the way we interact with each other, people that, really are just shutting down, or really angry, or really lost, and really needing connection, and, gaining that for those of us that have access through the computer. I mean, the amount of people that attend something like this has gone up, exponentially, because we are, not only because we're sheltered in place, but also because we're really needing connection very desperately. And so it makes me think in terms of movement organizing, how any movement that we're organizing has to be a healing movement. It has to heal us simultaneously as advocating for justice. The disability justice movement, we can think of it through, the lens of the principles of disability justice. We can think of it as we're doing climate justice work. No matter what we're doing, I mean, it's all essentially, in my opinion, disability justice related, because we're everywhere. It's not like you can pick an area where we're not. If we're organizing, workers who are organizing people with disabilities. And as disabled folks, we are really needing not just to survive, but also to heal from the actual experiences. And so that's been it's been a huge shift, because in some ways I feel like it's gone from my head really through my body to the tips of my fingers.
Wow.
We're in pain, and we need to love each other all the more.
That resistance and joy and healing and tenderness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
S.E., same question for you, just about a shift that you've had in your thinking or the way you engaged with your essay since you first published it.
So this piece originally ran on Catapult in 2018 as part of my Unquiet Mind column, which actually won a National Magazine Award this year, which kind of incidentally, I think, illustrates how much more visible the disability community is, because that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. And my thinking on this has really expanded. When this essay first ran, I had emails stacking up in my inbox from people who wanted to tell me about the crip space that they had created, or an experience that they had had somewhere, or who were shocked that such a thing would exist and wanted to know, where do I find this where I live? How long has this been around? What do you mean there's a space where an interpreter is just provided and you don't need to ask? What do you mean you can go see a dance performance and there's a ramp to get into the building? And in this moment, this feels particularly urgent because we see that COVID-19 is creating a lot of long-term health issues that will probably ultimately lead to lasting, if not lifelong, impairments, at the same moment that we have thousands of people in the street night after night being shot by police, dealing with the trauma of racism, of seeing police brutality. We have people getting their eyes shot out and their arms broken. And these are all people who are very involuntarily entering crip space. And we're seeing this rise of mainstream interest in things like mutual aid and how we can lift each other up as communities. You know, I think of the Disability Justice Culture Club. I think of the work done here in California during the PSPS. But we're also starting to have a tough conversation about things like conflicting access needs. And how do we create a crip space that works for everyone? And kind of coming to the realization that maybe that doesn't exist. And we need to stop talking about disability as a monolithic community that you can just create a generic space for, and start thinking about living in community with each other and together, and building up these spaces that break out of parent-focused medical models that are very based on, well, what's your disability? Let's compare notes. Like, how do we create spaces where we are joyful and proud and are building community and being accountable to each other and addressing internalized disableism and coming to terms with these really tough conversations about how it feels to be excluded from some spaces and why that might be. And this also kind of brings me to thinking about how to connect people with these things. I think a lot of kids, like Ariel was talking about, when you grow up disabled, you grow up in the medical system. You don't grow up in the disability community unless you luck out with your parents. Or I know, like in the little person community, there's much more community pride that children are raised with. So how do we get to these kids before they get corrupted, right? How do we reach adults who have just been disabled and are saying, I lost an eye and I don't know what to do? And it's like, well, I have some tips for you because I have been there. So sort of, how do we expand crip space to everybody?
But to your point about crip space being necessary, right? And sacred. Do you have any concern about people who are newly disabled entering these spaces and co-opting them or trying to change them or trying to dominate them with their notions or just their own ableism or their own orientation to having not been part of our community and seeing themselves as coming from the outside?
I think that is a really valid question, and it's something that we are really going to be struggling with. I think you almost need like an induction packet, right? So there are these places, you can't go there yet because you're not ready. Just trust me on this. But let's work on getting you there. Because you do have, I think especially you wind up in tensions where, for example, there are a lot of Black mental health communities that are very fiercely, closely held. And those are not spaces where I belong or am allowed or should comment about beyond acknowledging that they exist. And so I think you're going to see the same thing with more sort of newly disabled people. You're flung into an experience that society tells you is bad and scary and terrifying, which is like, you're disabled now. What you gonna do? And so I think you have to have some patient mentors who are willing to kind of be that bridge to initiating people to disability space. And books like this are a great way to do that, because you can say, hey, I'm gonna visit you in the hospital. I know you're having trouble with your vision. I'm gonna leave you an audiobook, like knock yourself out. And the more disability media that we get, the easier it is also to reach non-disabled people and maybe convince them to be a little bit less disableist in their own navigation of the world. Because I think a lot of people are really jarred right now with the realization that tomorrow that could be you. And then what are you gonna do?
Yeah, yeah. Like, what was that term you just said? Gentle mentors or gentle guides?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I had a friend that used to talk about something similar to that. So yeah.
And also you got to tag them in and out, otherwise it's just too exhausting.
It's exhausting, like the emotional labor involved with that. But yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
So my third question, actually, just for a second, I just want to circle back quickly to Ariel. And because you had mentioned in your essay, Ariel, about sort of being, and you said it earlier, about not growing up in crip space, not being part of disability community until, even though you always were, let me just say that to you, because as somebody who came to actually work in disability space after I had already had a whole other career as a reporter, as a newspaper reporter, I always felt like I wasn't quite part of the community. But the truth is, we always have been from like the second we're born. We're always all part of the community, whether we are viewed that way or we organize or we know the right people or we're in the right spaces. So you've always been part of us. But for you, I'm just curious to know about how your perspective on your place in community has shifted since your piece.
Yeah, so just to kind of touch on that briefly, I think part of what was so complicated was that, my twin sister and I had dozens of surgeries, right? And we would go to sleep, wake up, and sometimes our face would look completely different when we woke up. And so I think some of that was a personal thing where it was like I didn't really know how to belong in any community because I didn't even know how to belong in my body. I don't know, that sounds odd. I don't know how to explain it still. So I think since writing about my experiences and beauty and disfigurement, facial difference, community, all of these issues, it's really allowed me to embrace myself and say, just kind of acknowledge that I am more than what I look like, as all of us are. And so more of an acceptance of both myself and other people as well. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think since writing this essay and writing in general, it's led to way more self-acceptance and more of an understanding of my own identity outside of the appearance of my face. So I think it's changed everything for me personally.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Awesome. While I have you, let's just roll into question number 3.
Perfect.
All right. What is, earlier in the beginning, Alice and I were talking about, is there a disability canon? And she's like, no, we're blowing that up, right? But, I think what this does for me when there's like a collection of essays like this, or a piece of art by people with disabilities that I can take in and absorb, it's like I'm always hungry for more and I'm always looking for more. So what is missing for you that you want to see or read or experience when it comes to disability culture and art?
Yeah, so one of the essays in this book that really stuck with me was Kia Brown's essay on nurturing Black disabled joy. And I really loved that personally. The whole intersectional approach to disability in general, and to make it Cruzon syndrome or facial difference related, isn't something that I really had to think about growing up. So I totally acknowledge that there's, a level of privilege there. So I think, including more diverse perspectives is always great. And I'm not saying that that's not a thing that's happening necessarily, but just more of that, and also just more of a celebration of the different identities, I think is super important for normalizing it. And then in terms of facial difference and disfigurement, I want to see, again, more of a celebration of people who look different, not scars are scary and evil and bad. And hey, if you're attractive by society standards, you're good and you're trustworthy and whatever, sort of completely over that. So I don't know, there's a couple of films that have come out within the last couple of years related to facial difference and disfigurement. Ashley Eakin's short film Single about dating and disfigurement was amazing. Alexander Franchi's film Happy Face, that I know somebody asked if I was familiar with David Roche, and he's in that movie, so that's another one. So seeing this shift in just celebrating physical differences, different faces, and really making it so that people understand it's not something to be afraid of. It is just a different way of existing. So that's something that I would like to see more of, and that has been lacking, because those are, I can name 2, and that's awesome, but how many movies come out every year?
Right.
I want to see people with facial differences and disfigurements on TV, and not as the token, different person or whatever you want to call it. I just want to see it normalized.
Yeah.
I want people to have permission to exist as they are, and for there to be, I don't know, beauty in that, and not in an inspiration porn kind of way. So that's a rambly answer, but there is just so
good, because I feel that's so real, because like we're either typically represented in media as objects of pity or fear, the villain, or fear, or pity, or shame. It's usually just like this or that. Yeah. So I totally felt all of that.
Okay.
And I look forward to more of that too.
Yeah, same. So thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. All right, let's go to Lateef. It's the same question, like what's missing that you want to see or read or experience when it comes to our culture?
I really want to see more stories and more media that focus on people who use AAC. Hopefully, as a bonus, we can have people who use AAC producing that media as well. I know we had the show Speechless that were on the ABC channel for a few years, but the main character didn't really use AAC in real life, even though he had cerebral palsy. That is why I keep working on my novel, because I think it's a necessity that we have authentic stories of people who use AAC out in the world. I do this work with my poetry as well. If more stories of people who use AAC are out there, I think our way of life and mode of communication will be more normalized within our culture. The power in creating stories is then people then have the opportunity to empathize with characters who use AAC because their experiences and perspectives would be on full display. That is why this book is so great, because it is full of disabled stories.
Absolutely. I look forward to your book. S.E.? Oh, I'm sorry, Lateef. Okay, there we go. Hi, S.E.
Oh,
Okay. Same
so
question for you. Like, what's missing? What are you hungry for?
I touched on this a little bit, and I really keep hammering it home this year that I really want to see more disabled joy. We're so underrepresented in media, period. And when we are, it's like inspiration porn or super crip or, evil wheelchair using villain, sort of those categorical slots. And I feel like for a while people said, well, I want a character who just happens to be disabled. And, their disability doesn't really interact with their lives at all. They just happen to be deaf or happen to be bipolar. And I'm like, what if we could transcend this to a world where disability pride is represented and where disability is represented as a cultural identity and is one that may be complex and overlapping, that we are not singular. I kind of referred to the disability community as more like a constellation the other day, where all different points connected to each other with sometimes very different experiences. And I think that we really need to, when we're talking about the spaces that we're building and when we're honoring the spaces that we're creating, we should be able to celebrate those distinctions between spaces and to look at AAPI women creating powerful disability networks that are not for other people, or trans disability spaces. It is so amazing to be in a room with other disabled trans people and to know there are no cis people here. They are not allowed, even if they are disabled, and to create this very special crypt space that is incredibly rare and beautiful to be in. And when I see us represented in media, I don't see that. I don't see disability as a source of joy and happiness and connection. Mm-hmm. And that makes it really difficult to talk about the diversity of disabled experiences, because either you just happen to be, or you're like sad and living in a dumpster. I don't like either of those options.
Neither do I. Okay. All right, good. Thank you. Haben?
Haben speaking. I want to echo what's already been said. More disability joy. Let's have those stories. And in addition to that, when we have disability stories, there's often a disturbing practice of centering everything but the disabled person in the story. For example, in my personal experiences, I often hear, look at that amazing dog helping the disabled person. Or look at the technology helping the disabled person. Disabled people have agency. We create things, we design things, we work in partnerships with our service dogs, or we use the technology, we operate it or design it. So we need to be extra cautious to center the disabled people, even in stories about disability, rather than saying it's the tech that's helping the disabled person, or it's the dog taking care of the disabled person. Make sure that disabled people are centered in the stories rather than centering all the non-disabled things around the disabled person.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And Haben, I'm wondering for you, do you have any projects coming up or anything that we can look forward to?
I wrote a memoir called Haben, the Deaf-Blind Woman Who Conquered Harvard Law. It came out last year in hardcover. Next month, it comes out in paperback. And also this summer, it just came out in Korean. And I'm excited for people around the world who speak different languages to gain access to the book. One thing about the title is Haben, the Deaf-Blind Woman Who Conquered Harvard Law. Because so many people say, oh, you conquered your disability, you overcame your disability. No, I'm still disabled. Instead of asking me, how did you overcome your disability? Ask me, how did Harvard overcome its ableism? How did society overcome ableism? And there's still more work to do, both for society and for Harvard.
Absolutely. I love the way that you put that. Thank you, Haben. Patti? I'll let you take us home with that last question. Like, what do you want to see, read, experience? And also, what are you working on? What do we have to look forward to that's going to come from you?
Oh, well, yeah, there's some exciting things afoot. What do I want to see? I really second disability joy and celebrating of the non-normative body-mind experience. And I think when we feed and nurture ourselves through all of the avenues of pleasure, we can fortify ourselves for what's to come. Because I think, you know, in real terms, what's to come looks like it needs a lot of love and like it needs a lot of insistence on justice for us and for all oppressed communities. And, you know, pleasure is as critical to ourselves as is water and food, which are pleasure in and of themselves too. That's one thing. The other thing that I would say, well, actually, there are two other things. One very quickly that I was thinking about last night, preparing for this conversation, is about how we interact with each other. And one thing that I think would be so helpful is if disability culture shed politics of respectability. If we were just, you know, real with each other and that, you know, the system never wanted us, right? Like systems that are like extracting profits and relying on, you know, tropes of white supremacy and you know, gender normativity. They never wanted us. Like, why would I try to gain any kind of, you know, social currency in a system that basically says you should die? No, there's no point in that to me. So that's one thing. I would shed respectability politics. And also, like, in doing that, like, real struggle with each other, you know? Like, just because we're disabled doesn't mean that everything is the same, kind of echoing what S.E. was saying. You know, I would love to see real honest conversations, you know, like amongst disabled folks about what is the meaning of like social capital within disability, and like how does that get leveraged to elevate all of us? You know, how can we elevate all of us and not just individually kind of make sure that we're safe and taken care of? You know, what about the class privilege that some disabled folks have and others don't? How, again, can we, can we equilibrate power within disability community so that we are uplifting all of us simultaneously and not just individuals who are kind of making it out of, as individuals like, crypt prison or,
Yeah.
so I think that we can ask for accountability from each other and real commitments to being accomplices across sectors within disability community, and we'll be much stronger for that,
I see that happen a lot in disability justice spaces, but not necessarily in the larger like disability rights community, if you will.
Yeah,
But that's the work.
right.
Yeah, that is the work.
Yeah, I agree. And the idea that we're all tied in each other's justice, and like that none of us can be in a moment of, or in a position of comfort if not all of us can be, that there's no freedom if any one of us is left behind. I mean, that's just really, like, what about all the folks that are locked up? What about all the folks that are, on reservations getting COVID? And I mean, I agree that, sure, we need to be able to survive, but not just like a crip elite, but like our brothers and sisters that are most marginalized, disabled people of color, trans folks with disabilities, queer folks with disabilities that are getting hung up on suicide lines. Like those are our people. So I think I'd like to see us standing together with more unity.
Thank you. Thank you, Patty. There's going to be some questions from people that I think sort of related to that. I've been looking at the Q&A. I don't know if any of the presenters are able to look at the Q&A, but some of y'all are getting some shout outs, some snaps. People are really loving this discussion. So we're gonna just pause from the engagement for a second and let Emily announce the winners of the book giveaway and talk about a couple of other things. But it would be great if all of the presenters could sort of look at the Q&A or the chat and see what people are saying, because it's really great. So Emily.
Yes, thank you. I'm very grateful for all the supportive comments that have come in. I'm the Associate Director at the Longmore Institute on Disability, and we could not have been more pleased when Alice approached us about hosting this event, because this is exactly the type of tone we would want to talk about for the anniversary of the ADA, to hear voices like these out there. So thank you all for participating. And with that, I know what people actually want with my appearance. If they want a book. So allow me to share our list. Oh, hopefully you're all now seeing the book giveaway slide. I will read it aloud as well, and apologies in advance if I am going to mess up one of your names. Erin Ambrose, Amy Kenny, Benny Kraus, Christina Johnson, Evan Cathcart, Jessica Leung, Kevin Williams, Susan Chinson, Rachel Stewart, I'm pausing, I'm going way too fast, sorry interpreter, and Maud Stayart. To claim your book, and you get to choose your preference of PDF, audio book, or hard copy. One of the comments that came in was people praising Alice for immediately offering this book with an audio copy as well, which is just so exciting, and a digital copy and a plain language copy available on her website. But so if you want the PDF, audiobook, or hard copy, you get to choose. Make sure to let me know and email me at Beitiks, BEITIKS, at sfsu.edu. One more time, that's BEITIKS at sfsu.edu. Congratulations to all of the winners. And if you are heartbroken at this very moment that you did not win a book, I have good news, which is that there is another chance to win tomorrow. Tomorrow we will have another book giveaway of 10 books. Alice is being very generous here. And that is for the Longmore Institute's collaboration with the San Francisco Public Library. And once again, our most wonderful partner, the Disability Visibility Project. And it is a collection of essays on for ADA 30 called ADA in Color that have been published in the past week on the Disability Visibility Project. It's all disabled authors of color. And I've gotten to peek at a few, and they're incredible, and it's going to be just a really exciting group of people talking in a rich conversation. So I hope you'll join us. I will post into the chat the link, but it's tinyurl.com/ADA30 in color panel. And there's still plenty of time to register and join us and get one more chance at one of those free books. And with that, I'll pass it back to Yomi for some Q&A from the audience.
Thank you, Emily. So give me a second. I'm going to look at some of the questions that have also been texted to me to help with my low vision today. So I think I'll toss this one to Lateef and then anybody else who wanted to chime in. So someone has asked for suggestions on ways to connect more with other disabled people of color, such as specific groups, but besides Twitter. So any suggestions for ways that folks can connect? Lateef, would you like to take that one?
Well, I am in the organization Disability Justice League, Bay Area, and we came together around the current social justice moment around affirming Black and other people of color lives from police terror, especially BIPOC disabled people lives. That is a group that any disabled person can join. Also, there are a lot of podcasts that amplifies BIPOC disabled people voices, like Alice Wong's podcast.
All right. Thank you. Does anybody else feel like they want to answer that question about how to connect with disabled people of color? If not all.
Oh, Yomi,
Oh, Alice and Patti. Okay.
I was going to give a shout out to Patti's organization.
Yeah.
This is valid because, I mean, if you want to see the brilliance and beauty and just, creativity of mostly disabled people of color and disabled queer and gender non-conforming folks, check out Citizen Valid, SINSINVALID.org. They have online events all the time, but their website is great. And for anybody interested in disability justice, there is a disability justice primer that Patti wrote, and it's on their website. So if anybody really wants to understand more about disability justice, which some of us discussed today, this is really the source material, and I really want everybody to know that Patti is one of the central people who developed this framework. So Patti is truly the best, in my mind, source on really understanding what disability justice is all about.
Alice, you are too flattering. There are a lot of us that, I think took up the mantle you know, because we need to. We need to see ourselves. I mean, that's why we started Sins and Ballads, Leroy Moore, and because we needed to see places where disabled people of color, queer folks with disabilities were represented in as beautiful, having agency, as sexy. And, you know, we needed to see, literally, I needed to see other hot brown Crips in order to survive. But I wanted to say that folks can also do internships with different organizations, you know, where there are disabled people of color. I mean, I know that Sins and Ballad is, you know, open to interns. And, you know, now that we're a virtual office and the entire world is virtual offices, you know, it just, you know, it makes it more accessible. And we are going to have, and I think this is the first time it's going to be said publicly, we're going to have a show this year that is going to be in October at ODC, and it's going to be, of course, online, and we're working with artists from all over the country, and that's another place where we can exchange our ideas and thoughts and community as disabled people of color.
Thank you, because somebody was asking in the Q&A what you had coming up next, Patti, so thanks for that. Looking through a couple of questions. Here's a question from somebody joining us from Australia. When and how did the guests start identifying with the word Crip? Who would like to take that? First of all, this would be for somebody who identifies with that word. Not everybody does, but would somebody like to talk about that?
If it's okay, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
This is Alice. I hope other contributors also, if they feel they want to respond, they will. So I guess it started with, and I know the word is problematic. It's a word that a lot of people do not like, to feel this deep discomfort by. And, you know, they've been harmed by this word as well. So, you know, I completely understand why a lot of people don't identify that way, which is absolutely their prerogative. For me, I came into this Crip identity mainly through, I guess, writings about Crip culture and Crip theory. So this is about mainly, you know, disabled people talking about it as a politicized identity, and really looking at ableism as a form of oppression, and thinking about a Crip, almost like a punk aesthetic, where it is really about reclaiming something that has been so harmful historically, and trying to subvert that. So for some people who might not know, I'm a co-partner in a online nonpartisan movement called #CripTheVote, along with my friends Greg Barrett and Andrew Paulray. And we were deliberate about, I created the hashtag with the word Crip, really as a signifier that, you know, we're not trying to have a palatable kind of discussion or group. You know, this is about something by us and for us. And I think, as Patti mentioned earlier about respectability politics, I think this is an example of, you know, a way of creating a space that really shows people that you can enter, but this is, you know, going in, that this is really centered on disabled people. And, you know, there are people who use it every day talking about disability issues and political participation. So we have a blog as well. So like for all the people who don't like social media, don't like Twitter, I hear you. I see you. There is a blog, and we published recaps of our events and interviews with disabled folks who are running for office. But it's just a way to create space for us to talk about politics, because for so long we weren't, even included. But like, who cares now? Just we have our own space, we have our own power. So that's just another way of kind of recentering us. So that's about it. But I will share the link in a minute.
Thank you. Yeah, folks are asking for links to a lot of stuff that's been mentioned. I'm just going to look at the Q&A real quick. Someone wants the link or website for Sins Invalid. They were feeding their dog. We will be sure to get that to you. Kevin is saying that there is a Black Disability Collective private Facebook group where obviously you have to be Black and disabled to join. Thank you for that, Kevin. Some shout outs for folks. There was something that somebody had mentioned. Oh, somebody is saying that we need more representation of people with intellectual disabilities and learning differences. Absolutely, absolutely. Let's see. Corbett said there was somebody that was talking about, I think it was SE and I were having that discussion about newly disabled folks and like how to bring them into community. And Corbett has said that Stacey Park Milburn talked about the need for disability doulas to help folks on that journey. So let that marinate a little bit. I love that term, disability doula. And maybe, I don't know, Corbett, if you want to share more about that in the chat or anyway, that's a good point to bring up. Thanks for raising Stacey up there. Here's a question. How can disability justice leaders play a greater role in reforming the segregated public education system that does so much harm to children? That's big. I don't know if anybody would like to weigh in on that. And if that feels like a lot to answer for somebody in the next 5 minutes, maybe there could be an opportunity, Emily, for some of our contributors to sort of think through some of these questions and then respond later. I don't know, Emily, if there's an opportunity for us to have more discussion later. But I think that's an important conversation to have.
We will certainly, this is Emily speaking, we will certainly save the Q&A and share it with all of our panelists and encourage them to share answers or resources that we'll be providing afterwards. So okay. Definitely, we hear you if you're sending questions that aren't getting answered. They've all been excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. I have somebody wants the names of the films that Ariel mentioned. We'll be sure to get that to you. And then here's a question for either maybe SE or Haben. How would you build disabled community on college campuses? This is from somebody who is the underrepresented student officer for the University of California Student Association, and their focus is on increasing the visibility and community for disabled students. That's a great question. So either Haben or SE or Ariel, anybody who's been to college maybe and wants to weigh in on that.
This is Alice.
Yeah.
I just want to, before, if anybody else has a response, I just want to say that I think throughout the US, there have been more universities where there are student-led disability cultural centers. I know that Stanford has one, UC Berkeley recently has one. Syracuse University, University of Washington. There's at least, I think, 20 or 30 of these disability cultural centers, and these are, separate from disability student services. It's often created in coalition with students and staff and faculty, but centered on disability culture. So maybe that might be something to look into to connect with other, and the Longmore Center and Longmore Institute as well. So please look into maybe existing groups and maybe figure out the next steps, because I think a lot of these centers, it did take a lot of student activism to get these groups funded and established. So there are some already that exist out there. So, reach out to the ones that are up and running. You may be able to figure out what to do next.
Thank you, Alice. Hey, Patty.
Hey, I just also wanted to remind folks that we're everywhere, right? So we could go to a BS, like a BSU, a Black Student Union, or to a MECHA, or to the Queer Student Center, and essentially say, hey, are you disabled, whatever you want to call it, like, are you a disabled community member? Do you want to, if you are, come watch this hot film, or come watch, come introduce yourselves, and whatever you think would get some sort of attendance. But just that we can look for folks with disabilities anywhere, like literally in any community. We don't need to look just at disability-based organizations to find other cribs. Like we are everywhere.
Great, thank you. Hi, Essie. Essie's here too.
Yes, this is Essie. This kind of speaks to another question as well here, which is that if you're having trouble building community, maybe you are building the wrong community. Are you building a community for people or with them? This is kind of the question I ask, like if you have a disabled student film club and no one shows up, okay, well, why? Is it because it's on the wrong night? You don't make it clear that the films are captioned? The language you're using is not appealing to people? So sort of find out what people need and work with them to build that together, rather than kind of taking what we need is a disabled student union and we're going to do it this way and it will be great, because that way lies disaster and sadness for everyone.
That's a really good point. Thank you for saying that, Essie. All right. I think we're at time. This has been awesome. Thank you to the 300 plus people who got on this Zoom on a Saturday evening or afternoon, wherever they're, or even the next day, wherever they are in the world. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. Thank you to Alice, thank you to Haben, thank you to Emily, thank you to Essie, thank you to Patty, thank you to Lateef, thank you to our interpreters and our captioner. Thank you to everybody who helped put this on, and your questions and your energy were really dynamic, and I feel very lifted up and just privileged to have spent this time with you. So thank you, everyone.
Text on a purple and gold screen reads, "Thank you for watching. Please visit us at longmoreinstitute.sfsu.edu and on Twitter at longmoreinst and on Facebook at SFSU Disability."